Well, Happy New Year. 2026 has really kicked off with a bang, isn't it? Unbelievable things going on in both Venezuela and Iran, where both countries appear to be toppling their collectivistic dictators. And I don't know, Iran isn't quite kicking off, but apparently there's protests all over the streets. This is what I'm seeing all over Iranian social media accounts, people that live in Iran. They're starting to go pretty viral. And the reports I was seeing moments ago are that there's so many people on the ground, the regime cannot shut this down. And so all of my love and support to the beautiful Iranian people for toppling this brutal, murderous regime once and for all. Godspeed on that mission. And also to my fellow friends and patriots in Venezuela, much love and support to you as well, as your dictator, terrorist in chief, has been apprehended by the United States military forces. And what do we see happening with this? Because everybody watching this video right now has their opinions on the matters that I've just brought up to you. And all I would say is what really is interesting to me, because I'm no expert in what's going on in Iran or in what's going on in Venezuela. I've done some research into it. I've got friends from the region. I'm seeing what's going on social media and in the mainstream media, just like you guys are. And, you know, I'm taking a bigger view of things, and I'll leave it to you to look into the specifics. But here's what I'm generally sensing and witnessing, which is that we have the mainstream media, we have the far left political and social media pundits that are all freaking out about this U.S. incursion into Venezuela, calling it a kidnapping, calling it George Bush on steroids, calling it an invasion unlike we've ever seen before, and that this is somehow a bad thing that has just taken place. But then we hear the people on the ground in Venezuela who are all celebrating, as well as the Cubans, as well as many people in Latin America, because they know how this works. They know how these communist regimes operate. They work in tandem with terrorist organizations, human traffickers, organ harvesters. The Maduro regime has basically opened the doors to China, Iran, Russia, etc., to use Venezuela as a terrorist state, essentially. And that is always to be separated from what the people of Venezuela want and have always wanted. And so all I can say is it'd be important to listen to what the actual people living in Venezuela are saying. And if you listen to the Venezuelans, they couldn't be happier. They couldn't be happier. They are they're in tears, crying and thanking President Trump and America for assisting in this takedown. And many of them are in there saying, there is no other way we could have gotten out of this situation. That's how they felt. There was no other way of toppling this regime. It's too powerful. It's basically a criminal cartel. People are getting disappeared. It's what you would expect under a communist dictatorship, you know, in the warmth of collectivism, right? We also had that statement kick off the new year from Mondani in New York, the Islamo-communist that was just selected, or actually in New York, I don't even know if they need election fraud to get a Mondani in. I think they have enough people there to vote for the guy. But either way, he's the mayor, and he's out there talking about how we're going to be rejecting rugged individualism is out, and the warmth of collectivism is in. And this is just how they all talk. Maduro talked like this. Che Guevara talked like this. Mao Zedong talked like this. All of them do. All collectivists do. And I'm actually really happy for this, as well as this happening right before the Iranians started kicking off in massive defiance to the brutal, murderous, terrorist Islamic regime that runs Iran. I'm seeing this from Venezuelans, that they've had enough of being ruled by collectivism. And as this is kicking off, Mondani makes this statement that goes viral. Everybody's talking about it. The memes are already out in force. It has hit cultural temperature here. Like it is causing a mass effect, and a huge debate and a huge conversation is kicking off all over the world right now, all over the social media world anyways. And everybody's having to confront this particular topic of collectivism versus individualism, which to me, as somebody that comes from the world of philosophy, this is like the sun on my face for 1,000 years. Just the fact that we are all having this conversation. Because opinions be damned, having the conversation is what keeps this in the social consciousness, so that we can continue to upgrade the knowledge of the average person living in the West, especially, but hopefully around the world. We can inspire the pillars of freedom. But because the West is right here under direct threat from these big globalist high tables and these foreign nations that are run by terrorists and criminals and traffickers and fraudsters that are trying to have their way, and they're literally trying to take over the world by using these little renegade commies or whatever, fascists, to run their different enclaves so that they can eventually create enough chaos to bring in the new order of the world that they've got planned. And what I love seeing with all of this is that that's all unraveling right before our eyes, and a lot of people don't understand that. And they don't understand that this move by the US military to go in at this time, after all the back and forth that a lot of people didn't catch up on. They just sort of tuned in one morning, and I see people going, what happened? America just went in and kidnapped another country's president. Like, if you're coming from that place, like, what, did you just wake up from a 20-year coma? Paying any attention whatsoever to what's been going on in Latin American politics? I've been covering it on Truth Warrior periodically. I'm going to have to get my good friend David Genny back on to get his take on it. But I've been listening to, he's been sending me some updates here and there. I've had other friends from Venezuela that are talking to me. I've had people reaching out since I started commenting on it, which is why I start commenting on things, is I want to see who's going to respond. I want to learn. I want to hear the people on the ground, because I understand the media cannot be trusted at this point. I hope that's crystal clear to everybody. So if you're one of those people that's out there just absorbing this fact of what's happened, along with the propagated message that's seeded into that news break by the media and the social media influencers, to slant it all in a certain way and obscure the bigger picture of what's really been going on in places like Venezuela, while all of us slept in the West and didn't realize how relevant it was to what's going on in our countries, i.e. the drug trade, the trafficking, the bringing in of cartel criminals into your country through the unvetted immigration system for the purpose of building a democratic and left-wing voting bloc, and also to create havoc on the streets to justify further government expansion and centralization of power. All these things have been going on, and people are just kind of snapping out, getting out of the eggnog after Christmas and going, holy shit, man, what's going on? Did Trump just start World War III again? And then they realize, hold on a minute, a sane person would realize, somebody that actually looks at the facts and starts to catch up on what's happening, will start to go, well, isn't it a bit odd that if this is a horrible action by Trump and the military, and if there wasn't a bigger picture going on, because we're going to just talk a little bit about the bigger geopolitical implications and what has just been basically interrupted by this particular move, is that we really have to understand that you're not being told the full story. And so you got to get the full story from people who live in Venezuela, from people who live and have lived in Iran under those dictatorships. People that haven't lived it, and this is coming, I haven't lived it. I haven't lived in Venezuela. I haven't lived in Iran. But I speak to people who do. When I speak to these people, or when they message me, It's never like, oh, just want to let you know, here's a little fun fact about Venezuelan history. There's a little bit of corruption happening, a little bit of fraud, a couple, political executions and murders and people getting disappeared, and there's an entire fraud scam happening in the government. They're not so casual about it. They're like grabbing me by the shoulders and shaking me and go, you Canadian, you better snap the hell out of it. I don't know why I just had a New York accent there. Maybe I was thinking about Mondani for a second there. They're always, snap out of it. Yeah, the warmth of collectivism, it's a lie. The warmth of collectivism is an illusion, because when you turn around to find out what the warmth is, it's a big inferno. It's a big pit of lava. Once it's unleashed, it's going to wipe out your entire country. And so I hope we're getting an education as Westerners, catching up, who've had it, especially in Canada, man, had it so good for so long. America too. We've never lived under that level of a dictatorship before. So raw, so violent, so openly, obviously corrupt. It took us forever to have people like me and so many other people before me that started to smell a rat here in the West. And then, oh, look, they're doing some bait and switching. Oh, they're lying to you guys. Oh, they're twisting things around and they're committing fraud under the table. And people go, no, it could never happen in a Western country. It could never happen in a Western country. And you go, well, yeah, you know what my Venezuelan friends tell me? They all thought the same thing about their country. The Russians didn't think it was going to go the way it did under the Soviets. Nobody ever does. They never do. But yeah, we have so many examples of where it's just like, yeah, it's because the ideology that is at the root of all of this is flawed. The ideology of collectivism is flawed. And collectivism, see, this is something we should get into here. But maybe before I do this, actually, I'm jumping around a little bit. There's so much going on. If you think about it for a minute, if you have the people of Venezuela celebrating with tears in their eyes the end of the Maduro regime, thanking President Trump, thanking the United States. This is not an Iraq-Afghanistan situation, okay? And they're at a point where they're like, oh my God, maybe we could eat. Maybe we could actually eat food for a change. Maybe we could actually have some freedom. There's hope in the eyes of those people for the first time. And nobody's listening to them. And you think, okay, where's all, and these typical liberals that are all suffering from deep-seated hatred of Donald Trump, no matter what he does. And that's the only thing that matters to them, is their hatred for Donald Trump. These are the most selfish people on the earth, trying to lecture everybody else about morals and virtue. Yet they are the most selfish people, because they would rather hold on to their hatred of Orange Man and America, especially in Canada. Those bloody Americans always going around invading, and they're posting the Team America World Police movie images and stuff like that. And they don't understand that they can't admit that it's different with Trump. They can't admit it. They won't admit it. And that they are becoming everything that they claim to hate. You see, they think they're standing up for the little guy of the poor Venezuelan people whose country was just unprovoked, invaded unprovoked by the evil US Nazis. Like, that's their narrative in their head. It's not reality. That's not the reality of what's happening. The Venezuelans look at this as their liberation moment. So if you stand up for the little guy, and the little guy is, the people of Venezuela and the people of Iran. In Iran, you see women taking off their burqas and throwing them down, and people are cheering. And Western liberal females don't understand this. And they don't, and I'm like, where's the feminist movement going? Female liberation from a very oppressive and brutal patriarchal dictatorship that would kill them for taking off their burqas. That's why they're doing it. They're doing it in defiance A woman taking off her burqa in a public display and throwing it to the ground is an act that gets you killed in Iran and places like that by the morality police. They have what are called the morality police. It's your worst nightmares if you only knew what you were dealing with. And yet it's silent. We don't see standing in solidarity with my brave Iranian women, brave, beautiful Persian women who've been oppressed under this Islamic caliphate dictatorship, which is just another variety of what we call collectivism, by the way. They run it at the same program as the commies in Latin America, all right? It's even worse because it's like really saturated with also ancient Stone Age religious level ideology that's been programmed in for generations, right? Whereas in Latin America, it's a little more political. It's the class-based Marxist stuff. So people don't always see that it's the same poison pill that is trying to subjugate everybody to the will of one regime and one central power. And then if you zoom out of that, you'll see that the big globalist secret society, our own Western elites that are evil and corrupt, are basically trying to just do a more sophisticated version of the same poison pill as what has been foisted on these Latin American and Middle Eastern countries through those are the different brands of the same central poison. You know, and people don't see this, so they're confused by these kinds of things. But you know what I know? What I know is that Trump knows this. If he didn't know what I was talking to you about, we wouldn't be seeing these kinds of actions going on, specifically against prime targets like Maduro and Khamenei. So he's making moves. And it's favored by the people. We don't want to know the truth about it. And none of that stuff, by the way, has it. And none of this stuff, whether I'm talking Latin America, Iran, Somalians, all this kind of stuff, collectivism, this doesn't have anything to do with what color your skin is or race or any of that. It has to do with what ideologies have been baked in at the cultural and religious level and have been eventually put into political and social practice, which has resulted in devastation to the economies, to the people of those areas. That's the poison that someone like me would be identifying, and many others as well. But then what happens is that particular leftist mindset inflames the mind so much with emotional argumentation that the facts and the nuances and the bigger context of these discussions that need to be understood before we even engage in these discussions, which doesn't happen on social media. It's all quick, put the coin in the slot machine type of thing, right? It's basically, the social media is just a big giant Skinner box. Anybody's watched my content, you know what I mean by that. And so you can't, the people you're talking to that don't understand this, that aren't listening to the people on the ground, but are listening to CNN and CBC, they're not taking the time to think of the bigger nuances of these discussions and the bigger context and the histories and the actual truths that are faced by the people living on the ground under these dictatorships and have been for decades. Nobody's listening to them. They're favoring the media industrial complex over average people who are crying and trembling with joy at the fact that they are on the forefront of their liberation, thanks to the Trump administration, Marco Rubio, and Donald Trump. And I think this is part of a bigger military strategy to topple the branches of this big communist international, globalist international, terrorism international regimes, to topple them one by one so that the people in these countries can finally know peace and prosperity, at least this would be the goal, And we could start eradicating a world that's been run by criminals and terrorists and they're producing nothing but more crime and terror and evil. We need to do something about that because it's gotten so close to home, and it will just keep getting close to home. And all of these situations directly impact Western civilization. You think the drugs that everybody's overdosing on and the fentanyl hitting the streets and the human trafficking and the child sex trafficking and the group and all the things that we all see, the decay economically, do you think this isn't all related? Of course it's all related. So when I see Trump going in and taking out those two particular regimes, I don't care if you like the methods and you're going to sit there and argue international law and all these things. I'll save that for lawyers who know way better than any of you guys do, or me. But just think of this logically for a second. These people are feeling liberated by this. They're not feeling oppressed. If you understand the nature of communism, we're just going to use the word collectivism now because it's all the isms, all the collectivisms, all the variants of the same poison. And it's important to understand that there are variants. If you understand that there's variants of the same initial poison, which is collectivism as an ideology, that is something that eventually gets applied politically and economically to your country. And which is what has been selected as the type of political system that is wanted by the geopolitical elites for the entire world, run by one central dictatorship. What we're getting as a human species in this time in history is a preview, unlike any previous generations had access to be able to watch all simultaneously, so we can learn this lesson once and for all. Hopefully we can bake it into a point where we can teach our children about this, and that are the mistakes that continually happen over and over again that produce these kinds of evil dictatorships and anti-human, anti-freedom, anti-prosperity ideologies. These are the things that need to be eradicated. It's the ideas that need to go. And how do you get rid of an idea? With a new idea, a better idea that becomes impossible to ignore, that becomes impossible to refute as being something that actually would produce freedom and prosperity. That's the goal anyways. You can debate with me as to whether Trump and his team are the best at doing it. I think so far they're the best at doing it. I haven't seen anything even close to this. You're lying to yourself if you're going to tell me you haven't seen anything close to this. This amount of exposure. Guys, we didn't have any of these conversations before. 10 years ago, none of these conversations we're having. And it was like pulling teeth to get people to have conversations about individualism, collectivism, you know, all these things that all play into what's happening right now. And now it's the viral conversation. I'm grateful for that. We're having to speed learn about these different areas where all the, like we had to learn about Russia, Ukraine. What's the history of that? We had to learn about Iran, Israel, Palestine. We had to learn like all the things going on in the Middle East. We had to relearn everything we thought we knew. Now Latin America. There's moves happening because the realization that I think the U.S. military, the good guys in the U.S. military, that is, because there's definitely, I believe there's always been true patriots in the military. That'd be the best place you'd find them. Yeah, there's people in there that follow orders. Yeah, there's corrupt people in there. But you're also going to have a far bigger pool of people that are actually patriotic and are sick and tired of watching their brothers and sisters die in wars for Halliburton, okay? And would rather work for a real military that's actually defending their own country, you know? So those guys, know how to deal with these regimes, and they understand because they've been there. For how long has the American military been involved in these types of conflicts? Some of them shadier than others, depending on the administration. Don't forget, America's been run by the deep state for how many administrations now? So for the people that are on our side that are still not quite sure, because they have these horrible memories, justifiably so, of times where America has been used to oust other leaders, but it turns out that, you know, there's corruption going on with that. I understand why you're gun shy with trusting this one, but here I'm to tell you that all signs point to the fact that Trump and his administration are different from those past administrations. And you can tell that by their fruits. You can't always tell it by the rhetoric or the certain moves, but you can tell it by the actions. So watch the actions, watch the executive orders, watch the military actions. What's happening? Did Trump send his guys in there to invade and just start randomly killing innocent civilians? Like, that seems to be the way the liberal hive mind interprets all this shit. But then you find out, no, it's targeted strikes. They went in, they took the guy. He said, I'm going to do it. He did it. He warned Maduro. Maduro said, come and find me. I can't wait for you. Come show me you're a real man. I'll see you in Caracas. You know, all this kind of bravado. And Trump goes, okay, well, I'm coming in. I'm going to arrest you. Now he's arrested because the actions of Maduro are directly affecting what's going on in the United States with all this drugs and human trafficking shit. That's where you're going to realize, this is where this is all going to go. All the corruption. And we're going to find out these aren't disconnected regimes. This is a huge fallacy that people that don't understand the occult side of things, the secret side of things, who have been looking into this, they'll never get. They're stuck in CNN thinking, where it's just all random, it's just all separate events that are happening. You really think so? No, no, no. The world is at war once again over what ideas are going to dominate the world. The world is based on ideas, don't you know? The world is based on ideas. You'll say, no, it's money that makes the world go around. Yeah, but money is an idea. So the world is based and run on ideas. We're at war, and the war is, are we going to go individualism, freedom, sovereignty, merit? Right? Are we going on the virtues of what was built originally as the foundations of the West? Or are we going collectivism? Are we going dictatorship, central powers and authorities, constant surveillance, censorship, policing right down to your social media posts and whether you farted a certain way or not? Like, that's where we're going on that spectrum. So do you want more control, more centralized control, more of what the people of Venezuela and Iran and other places have actually already experienced? Are we doing more of that? We're going to go to that? Do you think this warmth? Do you think collectivism is warmth? Or do you understand what individualism even is? We should probably do this in this show. I've done this so many times, but I keep trying to find new ways of remixing it to hopefully, you know, appeal to different people. Collectivism, individualism. I mean, okay, so when you first hear those words, if you haven't been a student of politics and history, those words to somebody that is not a student of politics and history, but is just sort of a Johnny-come-lately, oh, what's happening? Those people, they go, oh, collectivism, individualism. I pick collectivism because it means community. It means coming together. It means sharing is caring. It means family and love and a kumbaya for everybody. It means the evil, greedy bastards and the bullies of the world get what's there, get taken down a few pegs, and the little guy gets to fly the flag for once. That's the warmth. The warmth in that is literally a unicorn. It's akin to believing in a unicorn. Everybody likes unicorns. My daughter drew me pictures of unicorns since she was a kid. It's so cute and touching. Ooh, the magical unicorn. It's an archetypal image. Right? This is beautiful in that sense. But I'm not telling my daughter that unicorns are real in the physical sense. That's what this collectivism is. It's a unicorn. It sounds like that on the surface to people that don't know what they're looking at. They don't understand that when we say collectivism, there's a very particular way that word is used and what it's used for. It's not talking about your idealistic views of kumbaya and brotherly love and world peace. That's not what it's talking about. Collectivism is very specifically a political system, a particular political system that has a package deal that comes with it. It's a product. that was created. And I tracked it to where it was created. And I'm not going through it in this show. It'll take the whole show to explain it. But let's just say it isn't coming from where you think it's coming from. It's not coming from the love and light camp. It's coming from the wolves in sheep's clothing camp. Collectivism is a political philosophy that means your rights as an individual do not exist. Rights, when we're talking rights, we're not just talking again about your idealistic pie in the sky, God give me the rights, this gives me the rights. No. What rights are actually recognized and enforced by your government, by your society, by your civilization? And what ones are not? Do we want the government to enforce your right as an individual to think, to speak freely, to move freely, to live freely, and to enforce law and order so that freedom can exist? Right? We're not talking a freedom that gives you carte blanche to do whatever you want, including stealing, raping, pillaging, and trafficking and grooming young children. That's not the freedom we're talking about. We're talking about freedom that is based in a moral code that was uniquely developed in the West. And that you are going to set up a government apparatus to support individualism, meaning the recognition that you do have individual rights. That is the primary. It's in individualism. It doesn't mean there's no such thing as charity. There's no such thing as caring for others. There's no such thing as family and community. Quite the opposite. It's the premise of how you structure that. That is what is the difference. And it's all the difference in the world. You have the freedom to say yes, and you have the freedom to say no. That's individualism. In collectivism, you only have the freedom to say yes. That's the simplest. I was talking to a teenager who's trying to understand this, who doesn't quite have all the information and a whole big political package to understand the words and the new, like, just let's keep it simple. If I'm talking to my teenage 13-year-old, this is how I would explain it. Under a system, under a political system of individualism, you have the right to say both yes and no. Under a political system of collectivism, any of the brands, doesn't matter what brand of it, because there's many brands of the same bullshit, right? Under collectivism, you only have the right to say yes. Yes to what the crowd wants, yes to what the government wants. If you say no to either of those things, cast your mind back to COVID era. That was collectivism. We're going to censor individual doctors, scientists, experts, paramedics, frontline nurses and doctors. We're going to censor them. You know, people who've actually developed, manufactured vaccines their entire careers that came out with, hold on, this is too much. We can't be mandating this. We're going to censor individuals that question the collective that was not selected by nature. It was selected by a small little regime of people that came in and said, we have the gospel that is unchallenged, unchecked, unquestionable, and anybody that is challenging the doctrine is challenging us, and therefore they are a threat. That's what they did during COVID. We got a crash course. We got like a Hollywood Studios little ride of what living under collectivism is like in the West. It was the closest that we've experienced as a big collective, especially in places like America, Canada, you know, some of the younger countries. Europe has experienced it a lot more in the past, which is why you should also listen to the Europeans, especially the Eastern Europeans that fled communism, you know, from Poland or Hungary or, you know, Romania. You listen to them, they'll tell you all about the warmth of collectivism as well. So do you find, let's just stop on that. Do you find that a coincidence at all? That I could sit here, I could call friends of mine from Romania, Poland, China, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba right now and be like, hey bro, well, tell me about the warmth of collectivism. after they spit whatever they're drinking out of their mouth because they're shocked I even asked the question, they will explain it to you in plain English. About what the reality of the warmth of collectivism is, what it is, why we don't understand it in the West, and that we are being indoctrinated to accept the same program that was just remixed a little differently for Western audiences. And that it ends up in centralization of power. It ends up in a combination of Animal Farm, 1984, Brave New World, you know, and just pick them all. And COVID doctrine, you know, just put it all together and you're getting a remix of that. And it produces nothing. Here's another good one for your 13-year-old to understand collectivism, individualism. Just show them a picture of North Korea and South Korea. Just show them that picture. Satellite image, North Korea, South Korea. The warmth of North Korea is so warm that all the lights are out from space because it's all rationed and controlled by the regime, whether you get electricity or not. And then you see South Korea that is far more capitalistic, not fully, but far more. And you've actually got the cities are lit up at night. It's like a visual image to literally define all the history we've been trying to warn you about. But here in Canada, we're too in love with collectivism because we think that equates to some kind of compassionate outlook on life. But then I say to the virtuous, compassionate leftists that refuse to understand this history, refuse. There's like an outright refusal. There's like, I just will not understand this. That how compassionate is it that you're sitting there allegedly fighting for the little guy, but you're not listening to the little guy, i.e. Venezuela or anybody from Iran. If you did care about the little guys, you'd be listening to what the little guys are saying. When they're cheering on the guy that you are trying to get arrested for liberating them after decades of being brutally oppressed, you might want to check your premise. If you're on the side of somebody saying the warmth of collectivism is where we're going to go, like go read Gulag Archipelago and Alexander Solzhenitsyn will tell you just how warm and lovely it was in the freezing gulags of Soviet Russia while everybody was living in equity, all right. Equity and misery, poverty, and mass death. So if you refuse to learn the lessons of history, history is repeating, and it will continue to repeat, and it will continue to repeat until there's just nothing left. So all eyes on Venezuela and Iran, especially if you live in Canada, because our politicians here are bringing us down the exact same highway. And if you're still in disagreement with me, I'm not going to ask this. If you're in the comments going, I want the warmth of collectivism, I'm going to demand that you demonstrate to me numerous examples of where the warmth of collectivism brought about peace, freedom, abundance, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, all the good things. You're going to have to demonstrate that. Because right now, I could easily demonstrate the opposite of that. And we're beyond debating anymore. You just have to watch the real news of what's happening. You got to just look at the footage of what's really going on. And it will all be shown. And that's what's good about this time. So eyes on. Listen to the people who lived it. Don't listen to your stuffy politicians and fake media journalists and fake influencers that are all getting paid, or they're just ideologically captured by the same poison. Collectivism is not warm. Individualism's rugged. But look where you are. You're on planet Earth. Nothing comes for free. And that was why we came here. We came here to experience life. We came to live life. We came to earn life. We came to make mistakes and clean it up. We came to forge on. We didn't come here to get handed everything. We didn't come here for ponies and rainbows. We came here for a real world experience, and we're getting it. And so head out of the clouds, eyes forward, shields up, sword sharpened, and the sword of this particular war is your mind. So don't let it become rotted out by this vile poison that was tailor-made, a tailor-made weapon to be made into the doomsday weapon of the West and of freedom and of the ideas that have brought the best out of humanity, not the worst. And may freedom reign supreme.